one today. I'm now shouting a bit because of the rain outside. Now, for those of you who don't know,
Die kennst du inzwischen, aber kennst du auch Logo für Logos und Corporate Identity?
Sorry, I'm in a motorhome, and the problem here is that when it rains, it makes a lot of noise. It makes more noise than you would do if you're in a house or something. So if you're in a house, you can probably go and hide from the rain. But here, I'm surrounded, if you like. There's one window, the other, well, not quite. I have to stretch a bit further. It's 2 meters 26 across. Obviously, and the roof is sort of made differently, and so it's all different. So what I would like from you to do now is to write in the comment section if you can hear me. Ben, very good. So Ben says, nice noises makes me want to nap. I really like it, being inside the motor. You can hear me, great. Just a little background. I really like it when I'm in the motorhome. There was a place I parked in southern Italy, and there was a storm. It was the worst storm there'd been for years. For me, it didn't seem particularly cold. But then again, I'm from Northern Europe, and this was a place called Pizzo Calabro. And anyway, so I parked my vehicle right next to the sea, and waves coming right over the top. Oh, I thought it was brilliant. Then the next day I thought, hang on, I've allowed the vehicle to get covered in salt, and so which wasn't all that wise. So the thing to do then was to take it to the car wash, which, you know, to find a car wash where you can actually wash a larger vehicle, it's not that easy. They're not all over the place. I mean, in larger cities maybe, or where you've got places in lorry terminals, yes, but it wasn't that easy to do. So I've had to actually give that one up. Right, shall I continue with this talk on Stahlecker? Well, I'll tell you why I'm going to talk about Stahlecker, because I I work for a company in a place called Heilbronn. Heilbronn's about 70-80 kilometers to the north of Stuttgart. And this is Baden-Württemberg, the state of Baden-Württemberg, and from here to the southwest there's this village called Sternenfels, and in Sternenfels it's a village. It's won a lot of awards. It had a rather strange politics in this village. Even in the fiddled elections of March 1933, the Communist Party still got some, like, I can't remember what it was now, 40% of the vote, something like that. And maybe they felt they were out of range of being harassed by the Nazis. And the Nazis even came in third position in the fiddled elections of March 1933 there. But in Sternenfels in the year 1900 was born this character, Franz Walter Stahlecker. Now, his father was the vicar there. He was the Lutheran. So I went to Sternenfels over the last few days. So on Thursday was a holiday, and started. So I went on Friday and Saturday I was somewhere else en route, and then it's not very far from here. Sternenfels is maybe 35-40 kilometers, something like that, and if that, I mean, that's by roads. And so I was there I arrived on the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, left Tuesday morning, and I wanted to get this feeling for this place. This character, Franz Walter Stahlecker, is responsible by his own count for 249,000 deaths. Now just think of that sum. I wanted to see how many people lived here in Heilbronn, and I forgot to do it. It's a huge number. Just think how many people live in whatever, either the town you live in, or the county, or the state, or whatever. It's a huge number of people. murdered in the space of 7 months. And anyway, I went there, and so the church was locked, so I couldn't actually get in. Then on the Sunday morning it was going to be open. So they in Germany they don't really have that many churches services as like in Poland. In Poland they're constantly having services, but it's locked between. And I was surprised that this church was actually locked when I tried to get in. And because it was Easter Sunday, they were having a service. Maybe they have a service every week, but the lady who was taking the service, Cornelia, I remember her name was, she was at one village at 10 o'clock, and then she was going to be in Sternenfels at 11 o'clock, so presumably the service was only half an hour. Anyway, I sort of I turned up, and then I thought, when I went there, I thought, if I start talking about this to her, it's going to, no matter how nice I try to be, it's going to come out as being accusatory. And so I didn't say anything. But the priest, the vicar, or whatever you call a evangelical preacher, had 3 sons. His first son was born in 1898, and that son was a famous paleontologist. He went off to Brazil and Argentina in the 1920s, and he found the fossils of this animal that lived 240 million years ago. And the animal itself looks a bit like a modern day hippopotamus, sort of. It's sort of a bit smaller, but it was a reptile, of course, because mammals weren't around in those days. And it got his name, it's Stahlecker, and that's the name of the genus. And they've sort of found other species, then they say there weren't species in this genus. As things stand at present, there's just 1 species in this genus. And oh, by the way, if the noise outside gets too bad, please write it down, because I'll just continue anyway once I get into the flow of things. Now, anyway, at the university in Tübingen, they have, I believe, or a museum in Tübingen, they've got the skeleton or the fossilized skeleton, or a mock-up of this animal that they discovered. And now it's known not only to live in Brazil and Argentina, what is today Brazil and Argentina, but also in Namibia, because in those days South America and Africa were together. Then they sort of pulled themselves apart, and over the next 240 million years. So anyway, he's quite the older brother is quite famous. He died around 1977, I think it was, if my memory serves me correctly. Now, and the third one, the youngest, born in 1902 or 3, I can't quite remember, but also born in Sternenfels. He went off, and I don't know quite what he did. I don't know much about it. I think his name was Gerhard. Now, what I do know about him, the family, is so the father was Paul Eugen Stahlecker. His wife was Anna. The father was born around 1874, I think it was, something like that. He died in 1947. Now, the father he was a nationalist, and he brought his family up in this strict nationalist surroundings. And now, to quote the recently deceased Pope, who said something, how can you say you're a Christian if you're opposed to people coming from other countries, or you're opposed to immigrants, or you won't help immigrants? Words to that effect. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing now, but I can't quite remember what it was. How can you be a nationalist and be a Christian at the same time? Surely these two things, being a Christian is surely opposed to nationalism. Hello. And that's my opinion, you know, not being a Christian myself. I just, it would appear that way to me. But anyway, so the father, if he died in 1947, then he would have known what his education had done, the deaths of nearly 250,000 people at the hands of his son, he would have known about the Holocaust, and he would have seen the destruction of Germany as a result of this nationalism. And there's all of this. Now, there was another thing, was that I didn't talk to that many people because there wasn't that many people around. And I also had to wait for other people to make conversation with me. I don't sort of go up to people and say, hey, do you know there's a war criminal who was born here? And but of the people I did talk to, nobody'd heard of him at all. One of the reasons I wanted to get into the church was to see if there was, sometimes in churches you see a list of the former, who was in charge, the bishop or the vicar or whoever it was. But I didn't get in. But I did get to the war memorial. Now, Walter Stahlecker was killed in 1942, in March 1942, by Soviet partisans. And I was very glad to say his name wasn't on the war memorial. I went to the war memorial twice. I didn't film it. I hope I photographed. I can't even remember if I must have photographed it. But anyway, I didn't film it, which is unusual for me because I go on filming war memorials because I like to show the effect that wars have on small communities. So this I found this was touching something that I felt that other people hadn't touched. I mean, there have been sort of some papers written on Stahlecker, but there's, as far as I'm aware, there's no book on him or anything of that nature. The University of Tübingen has actually written about some of the evil people that studied there. So, and I think there are 5 people, 3 of whom were from Einsatzgruppen, that studied at Tübingen University. And in the past, I've also talked about the University at Erlangen, which is near Nuremberg. That must have had a particular law faculty there, law faculty that attracted people to go there, which is the reason why so many of them, the criminals, did go to Erlangen University. In the case of Tübingen, I can't really explain it. But in the case of Walter Stahlecker, his father ceased to be the vicar in 1905. And then he moved to Tübingen to look after a girls' school there. And that's why Walter Stahlecker, or the sons, the 3 sons, were brought up in Tübingen. And they ended up going to the university there when the time came. Now, what I was thinking of doing today is, first of all, I'll see how far I can get, but I won't go into the time when he was in the Einsatzgruppen. Instead, I'll talk about what he did up until those moments, because I'm now coming to the conclusion that maybe what's important is not the fact when they were actually murdering, which is the important bit. It is what led them to commit these murders. And anyway, so Walter Stahlecker, so he went to school. He was born in October 20th of October, if I remember, 10th of October, 1900. World War I started 1914. So he joined the army September 1918. And so in fact he wasn't quite 18, but I joined the army before him, and there wasn't a war on when I actually went there. Now the thing is, he didn't see action. He missed that. He was fortunate enough to miss all that, but he came back, and he joined a student battalion. Now in Germany there was the Revolution of November 1918. And this led to a lot of anarchy everywhere. Now, in the case of Hitler, yes, there is. In the case of Hitler, you've got a situation that Hitler's in the hospital in Pasewalk. He's released in the 3rd week of November. He goes to Berlin, where he must have seen it. Then he goes off to Munich. And you've got to ignore what he wrote in Mein Kampf, because that clearly wasn't what happened. But Hitler was possibly in the in the workers' battalions, these what something called communist or whatever groups that had taken over in Munich. In the case of Stahlecker, he came back and then he joined a Tübingen student battalion, and they formed a group called the Metzelsuppe, or super means soup. I can only say Metzel, like slaughter soup, a slaughter group. But super doesn't mean grouper. Anyway, and so they formed together and they went off to Stuttgart, marched off to Stuttgart, and their idea was to protect the existing German government, that's to say the Weimar Republic, really effectively, against the political left. And I think that in his case, this can only have reinforced his conservative nationalist ideology. In some cases, like in Hitler as well, or maybe in Hitler's case, Hitler might have even been more, he could have gone that one way or the other. But in the case of Stahlecker, who's been born into a certain amount of privilege and wealth, and therefore this sort of must have reinforced his idea that only the people who ought to rule are a certain class, and it's those that are his position, the super wealthy, or not, maybe not super wealthy, but the wealthy. So many of these people from the army and not student or potential students, they volunteered to join the Württemberg police force. The police either took them or didn't, or it didn't. Some may have taken some on, may have taken some as volunteers, because at the end, in this situation, just where all hands were actually needed. And Stahlecker, whilst he became a student studying law, he also joined the Deutsch-Völkischer Schutz- und Schutzbund. So the Deutsch-Völkischer, so the German Völkisch Schutz, Protection, Schutzbund, Defense League, something like that. So these, and this organization, the Schutz und Schutzbund, was the, to a certain extent, it competed with Hitler until the Coburg incident, where Hitler had his weekend out in Coburg, and after that, the Schutz und Schutzbund people largely joined up with Hitler. So in a way, we could say that the Schutz und Schutzbund groups formed, created, or certainly reinforced as a result of the events of the First World War. These are the people then joined the Nazi Party later, when the Nazi Party became the dominant force in German politics around 1925 on the extreme right. So even though when he was a student, Stahlecker was a member of these sort of student organizations from the extreme right. So it would seem that he did join the Nazi Party around 1920, 21. But anyway, I'll get on to that. So he studied law, finished his law degree, and what many people did, they sort of went into the civil service. We've seen that with many other criminals I've talked about. And so in his case, he joined the Württemberg civil service, and he became what's called a government councillor. And he was put in charge of an employment office in a place called Nagold, and which isn't so far from Stuttgart. And in 1932 he got married, and his future wife, Louise Gabriele von Gültingen, was a member of the aristocracy, or the former aristocracy. Now, in 1923, Hitler had his comedian, whatever the word is, his humorous attempt to seize power, the putsch. And then the Nazi Party got banned, and and so many people left the Nazi, well, they had to leave because it was banned. They went off and joined sort of equivalent organizations or something similar. His membership obviously also lapsed. But when the Nazi Party was refounded in February 1925, so Hitler was let out of prison December 24, 2 months later they've refounded it, but Stahlecker, he didn't rejoin. Now in his case, he could put it down, yeah, okay, well, like many of us, he was a bit daft when he was a student, and then when he got himself a proper respectable job, he just he gave it up. I mean, I've often wondered what happened to these characters. In my day, obviously in the 80s, you got the people, it was on the lunatic left who they were the ones, and I've often wondered, well, what did they do afterwards? These characters who were more or less Marxists and or Trotskyists, as they called themselves, because their argument was that, well, yeah, but Marxism's not very good, but Trotskyism's really good, as though there were any difference between the two. Anyway, I don't know what happened to them. I didn't have contact. Oh no, there was one woman I remember. There was this. I've forgotten. Maybe I shouldn't even say her surname. No. Her father died about 15 years ago, and she was left £1.5 million, I think it was, or £2 million, something incredible sum of money. And she'd made some career in PR, and I can remember her as this really sort of, to my way of thinking, as sort of a disgusting upper class twit with lots of cash. So I felt, but she had these extreme left, and she would shout at people who weren't on the same ideas as she was. These words, though, left and right, I need to also point out. Somebody called me in the comments sector, said this is leftist propaganda, referring to me. These words left and right don't really mean anything, I don't think, any longer. I think that when you can start calling people who are clearly pretty anti-communist, as I am, and not only that, I've got a CV which proves it, in my opinion. I was detained in 2 communist countries, and when you can start calling me as being leftist, I think it's a bit absurd, because I've certainly got humanitarian ideology, but I do not share this idea, which indeed some of the things I see in the United States in the current government is what I would term leftist. But so I think it's lost all meaning anyway. Anyway, that apart, so I'll come back onto this, which is Stahlecker. He's got the job in the employment office, and around 1932 he applied to go back. So May 1932. He decides he's going to go join the party again, but in this case, he because of his job, he knows the local Württemberg political Reich governor, which is Wilhelm Mohr. I've spoken about him in the past as well. It's about time he got his own video. And Mohr, there was a conflict within the Nazi party there. And the head of the state political police was a man called Hermann Matthijs. And now, the Gestapo was founded in March 1933, but that was in Prussia. The Gestapo took all the rest of the other states of Germany. It wasn't until 1936. They had a political police office. And now, Stahlecker got himself a job from the employment office. He became what was called a government councillor at the Württemberg representation in Berlin. Now, the states of Germany also have their own sort of representatives in Berlin today. Today, where the former chancery was, there's a street, and you've got all these legations from other places, which is quite obviously. You've got Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, then you've got North Rhine-Westphalia. It seems quite odd you've got in the streets of like the embassies of these places in Germany, and it was the same then as well in even under the Nazis, which may seem a bit odd. Indeed, Hitler's job was he represented Braunschweig. That was his official job. he was a member of the representation of Braunschweig in Berlin. It was a no-show job, like the mafia sort of arranges for people, but and he was constantly on holiday from it. But anyway, so 1934, Wilhelm Moore has decides that Stahlecker is to take over the job of the state political police. And in June 1934, there's the Night of the Long Knives, and one of those knives ended up in Hermann Matthys. Now, whether or not Stahlecker had anything to do with it is not known. I think he was in Berlin at the time, so I don't think he did. But certainly, Stahlecker showed his loyalty to the state, to the new state, I should say, to the Nazis, to the party rather. And anyway, and he moved to Stuttgart so he could run the political police from there. He got a house in Gustav Zieglerstrasse 41, rather posh area. Yeah, and he had first children were born there, twins. He had 4 children in total. And what Stahlecker did, though, whereas his predecessor, even though he was a Nazi, but he showed himself at times, he would argue back and all the rest of it. Stahlecker was in with the system. And he was perfectly prepared to go around and talk to the local bishop, for example, the Protestant bishop, and he put him under arrest. He had publishers of Catholic publications banned. The Deutsche Volksblatt had to cease publication, which I think was a Catholic publication, if I remember rightly. 1st November 1935. He banned the editor-in-chief from ever writing again. Sonntagsblatt, which was a weekly newspaper, was constantly monitored. This was one of the few papers that tried to sort of tell people what was really happening in using language which was a bit in a subterfugious way. But anyway, they're hoping that the readers would understand, but the censors wouldn't. Well, obviously they got away for a while, but they didn't. The main enemy, as far as they were concerned, were those parties which were banned. So it could be the communists, it could be the social democrats, it could even be people from the former right-wing parties. Although most of those, for example, like the DNVP, were just keep themselves quiet. But certainly it's the social democrats above all. And there were a number of resistance groups. People were sort of picked up, they were arrested, they found themselves in prison. Some could even find themselves in a concentration camp. In 1935, there was a communist group around a person called Stefan Lovasz, whom I think came from Hungary. And Lovasz's group had been passing on information about German armament or rearmament to intermediaries in Switzerland. And it was Stahlecker who led the investigation. These people, 4 people in the group, including Lovasz himself, were sentenced to death in June 1937 by the People's Court in Stuttgart, and they were executed in Berlin 20th of June 1938. He was quite active in 1936. So the Gestapo became the Gestapo. This was the linking of the political police and the criminal police, the Kripo. And so that was under the leadership of Reinhard Heydrich for the entire country. But in Württemberg, it was Stahlecker who was the boss as from the 1st of October 1936. Stahlecker, incidentally, was actually older than Heydrich. He got posted then next to Breslau, today Wrocław. He was there for six months. However, in March 1938, Nazi Germany invaded Austria, and Stahlecker, directly subordinate to Heydrich, organized the Gestapo in Vienna. And when you think of the Gestapo in Vienna, there's one person above all that you'll think of. Who is that? Any guesses? No? Right, Eichmann, for example. Adolf Eichmann, you think Adolf Eichmann, he was there, he went to Austria, he wasn't Austrian. Well, he's often thought to be an Austrian, actually he wasn't, but he's often thought to have been an Austrian. And so he was there, Eichmann was there to actually get rid of the Austrian Jews. But the person who was really in charge of doing this was Stahlecker, although he allowed Eichmann to take all the, I don't know, glory, I suppose, whatever it was. I often think it was Eichmann referred to Stahlecker in sort of glowing terms. Stahlecker was Eichmann's boss. In October 1938, Britain and France horrendously decided to give a large chunk of Czechoslovakia to Nazi Germany in order to buy peace. And look how badly that turned out. There were Einsatzgruppe, which went into Czechoslovakia. There was Einsatzgruppe also went into Austria as well. And in charge of one of these was Stahlecker. His role there, he sort of came from the south, from Vienna, and his job was to find out anybody who mightn't like the Nazi Germany. And this could be Czech, it could be German speakers. It didn't make any difference. There were plenty of German speakers who were arrested in Czechoslovakia as being opposed to the Nazis. It's really, this is something that's often forgotten. The Sudeten Germans were all on the side of Nazi Germany. It's not true at all. And as far as we know, that there were around 10,000 people who were arrested or expelled by Stahlecker's group. It's difficult to say exactly. And Stahlecker must have done such a good job as far as Heydrich was concerned that he sent them off the next thing to Norway in 1940. And when he was there, he was doing something similar. But in the case of Norway, he couldn't show the same levels of violence, let's say, that may have been used in Germany itself or in occupied Czechoslovakia. But one thing about Stahlecker, it needs to be pointed out, is that he was somebody who would think things through. He'd be very sober, he'd be very rational. I don't think he was involved in the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, but if had it been, he would have been in the planning of it, not in just going down and just shooting at anybody who appeared. He wrote reports, and these reports didn't just talk about politics, but also talked about economy and things related to culture. And this showed him to be somebody who could sort of get into the thoughts of what it was like to occupy a country. In February 1941, he was promoted to SS-Brigadeführer and Major General of the Police. And this was when he was appointed to be head of Einsatzgruppe A. And I'll do that in a different time, because that is something I think of a different time. The Stahlecker is the one who sent back the report with the coffins on it. So you've got I mean, I've used it in a couple of videos. You see the coffins with the amount of people who had been killed. Right, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to actually come on to some of the questions, but actually there's something I wanted to do before doing that. I wanted to read something that was sent to me by Michael. I'll read this out, because I should have said this first actually. Like this, your research is exemplary and your information regularly fascinating. Oh, that's nice. But your awkward delivery is frequently maddening. Please script or rehearse your delivery. Thank you. Okay, right. There is a problem here with my delivery. Yeah, that's why I lost my job at the post office. And the thing is this: is if I'm speaking something more or less off the top of my head, and I'm trying to maintain a steady flow, it particularly, I've got things happening, not only your messages, but I've got other things happening around me sometimes. People sort of signaling me that they want to speak to me or whatever. And it is very difficult, but I mean, it's not possible for me to actually to write a script and read it, I just really don't have the time to do that. I have a normal job. So anyway, I thought I should have said that at the beginning, but sorry, I'll mention that one again. There's something else actually I want to mention about Stahlecker. Oh, sorry, I'll come on to this. So I'll go through your points first. So hello Craig and Ben and Go and Eleanor, and Tosh says, here's a good one for you to do von Lindenmayer one day, no more, but he was born in Poland, about World War II story that goes with him. Okay, right, now there's something. Okay, Mike says, isn't there a death photo of Stahlecker in his SS uniform with his hand bandaged? Yeah, I was going to mention this actually, and when I was thinking about doing this, I thought I'll mention the photographs of him. There are, when you look at the photograph of Stahlecker, which I've used as the avatar for this little talk, he looks like one of the victim, a Holocaust victim. If I'd asked you, is he a perpetrator, a bystander, or a victim, I bet you'd have chose victim. Well, I would have done anyway. I know of 2 photographs of him sort of in his student days, and he's looking quite intellectual, and there's another photograph of him when he probably taken in the Soviet Union in the second half of 1941. He's got SS uniform on. He's got that cap. He doesn't look smart. You can see he's not a soldier. This is somebody who probably wasn't always going to be photographed. I'm sure, when I was on exercises, I didn't look particularly smart either. I might have been covered in mud or something. But these things happen. And there's also the photograph of him when he was killed. He's dead. He was ambushed, and well done the ambushers, and they killed him. So yes, that's it. I saw another photograph of him, but I think it was on a video game, where he had been he made older. He was in his 60s. But anyway, so yes, Mike, that's him. Right. Ben says certainly knew of Stahlecker, but it was mainly in the context of Einsatzgruppen making a country Judenfrei, and that he had been killed. Yes, it was him. Judenfrei is written in the his report for Estonia with the coffins. That's him. That's him with the map and the coffins. And Tosh really wants me to do a last name on von Wildau. Right, sorry, Ben says he has to see my CV. Actually, I just, that isn't in my CV. I just sort of said that. Quadsko. Tosh writes about Quadsko. Quadsko's in Silesia. It's a rather nice place there. And, yeah. So, okay, right, well, Tosh, if you write that down a bit more specific, I'll see what I can do. Thanks very much to Zing there. That's very much appreciated for the donation. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Hans brings up the Stahlecker was yet another lawyer. Now, so I don't understand this. What was it about lawyers? Why were there so many? Sometimes I understand why lawyers are in Parliament. Because they're good speakers. I mean, actually, when I mentioned the point of me not having bad delivery, I thought, well, yeah, but my delivery's better than that of Boris Johnson, and he was Prime Minister. There's a cult following around him, and there's no cult following around me. But yeah, I don't know. I mean. There must be a reason. It just seems so illogical. I know that lawyers don't often have no morality. Yes, I agree with that. That happens. I mean, I've asked lawyers, how can you have represented this person? You knew he was guilty. You know, a response. Well, they have the right to it. You got to do your best. I've asked people from the United States, from Canada, from Poland, from the United Kingdom. There was actually a famous case in the UK. Oh, this happened in the 70s because those who are old enough might remember it. There was a test match, and it looked like England were going to win it because they usually lost. But on the last day, somebody dug up the cricket pitch. And this was in a campaign to get somebody freed, and I can't remember who it was. But in the end, it turned out he was guilty anyway. But the person I knew actually represented him. Anyway, that was a long time ago. Anyway, so they've got people. They know that the person's guilty. So how can they possibly represent them? And this is the sort of thing that's always goes through my mind. It just, I don't know. Maybe I just don't. Whatever. There's a very good film called In the Company of Crows with Casper, what's his name? Gooding Jr. I forgot his first name, Gooding Jr. And he is a lawyer. And then he knows his client who was guilty. And then he starts questioning him as the prosecutor might have done. And the judge is really angry. And he's debarred, and then he goes off and becomes rents a fisherman, rents a fishing boat. Anyway, good. Yeah, Eleanor points out that some of the brilliant lawyers could not save themselves from the hangman. Yeah, there were plenty of. There's plenty of good ones as well. I'm not suggesting that all lawyers are bad. There's plenty of moral lawyers around today, and there were then as well. Many lawyers were involved in the attempted coup of July 1944. Yeah, Mike says most of those present at the Wannsee conference were lawyers, just as when the Nuremberg laws were made. Because the discussions at the Nuremberg, at the Wannsee conference were largely legal, weren't they? So I mean, what we've got left of them, we don't know, because it was the protocol was redacted so many times. But I know not most of them, though, Mike. Several of them, but not the majority. But you know, a lot more had actually studied law, and you know, majority were government servants, or one way or the other, either lawyers or in the civil service. Put it that way. When I say government service, I'm not including the military in this, or the SS, I should say, who effectively were paid for by the state. Okay, thanks very much for watching. I think that's it. It wasn't actually. I was expecting this to be worse with the sound outside. Also, it's another piece of housekeeping, so to speak, because I've been having these polls and to ask you what film to put up next. Now, I only ask polls when I only put things on the poll when I've actually done it, and so I don't put up like an idea. Oh, I wouldn't mind writing something on, I don't know, 1920s in Estonia, for example, something like that. That might be a good thing to write about. Now, I don't do that. I've only do things which I've actually written. But in this case, I have finished my talks on both the Wehrmacht and Baba Yar. Sorry, I've written it, and I've done the next one as well, which is about the Egyptian rocket program and Otto Skorzeny. But in both cases, I haven't actually put the videos together, and it's just in the last few days I haven't really been able to do it. I can't really do it now. I'm in a situation where because of my normal work, I've really got to. I can't even do things other than this. So I've got to really concentrate on my. Indeed, when I finish this, I'm going back to my normal job, the day job. This thing though about Stahlecker, when I was in that village, so that was something. It really got to me. That did. It was just. You know, I've been to lots of places where horrible things happened. and sometimes they have a bit of an effect, sometimes they don't. And this is the first time though in Germany itself where really, I mean Poland and things I saw, maybe Ukraine maybe as well a little bit, where places went to mass shooting place. Having said that, in Ukraine I was there, there was a war on, so it was a bit different. Yeah. Okay, so Mike just pointed out that Rudolf Dietz left the Gestapo when it began to use extra legal methods, which he opposed. Yeah. You have this. There were people who said, no, you can't do that. It's not right. I've mentioned before the fact I had a partner 12 years ago, this woman I was with, who was a lawyer, and she worked in Parliament in Poland, and when the so-called Law and Justice Party was elected in 2005, and she was asked to do things which were effectively illegal, and she said no, she wouldn't sign up on anything like that. And the member of Parliament said, well, that's the will of the people. And she said, well, in that case, if it's the will of the people, change the constitution, then I'll sign it. And that's the way I think things should be. In the United States, maybe similar things may actually start coming up right now. And okay, Tosh, if you go to my Alan Heath's history site on Facebook, you can write to me there. I'll even write that down for you. Alan Heath's history. I can't remember what it's called. Either got history site or history page. I can't remember. You might on Facebook. And mind you, it might take a while for me to respond. Eleanor says, thank you for another awesome presentation about one of the lesser known criminals, but who deserves a place in the list of the infamous? He does, doesn't he? He really does. I'll tell you a story that happened to me yesterday. Yeah, it was you. Oh, when was it? What's the date? Wednesday? Yeah, it was Tuesday. It was yesterday morning. Seems like a long time ago. So I was still in Sternenfels, and there was a lady walking a dog. The dog had 3 legs. I met 3 people with I met 3 people who had a 3-legged dog while I was there. Anyway, and so she started talking. We were talking, and then she told me this about religion. She started saying that her family, she had brought up a daughter without any religion, and she said, well, she can choose a religion later. And she lived in Sternenfels, so I told her the story of the church and the pastor there when he was there and what happened. And that she looked quite shocked when I told her, and then I said, you know, that's what religion can do. So you did the right thing. But I think I'd be wrong to blame religion. I think you've got to blame nationalism, because it's that which was at fault. And let's face it, nationalism often ends up destroying those who are nationalists themselves. Anyway, good. Thank you very much for being here. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about the law again. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about the law. I'm going to talk about the law in Nazi Germany. I'm going to talk about death sentences. And I should have done what I should have done was the 2 things I decided I just didn't have time to put together. The Wehrmacht march on Babin Yar, Wehrmacht and Babin Yar, to use the Ukrainian words, which I'm trying to use now. Indeed, I'm refusing to speak Russian unless I really have to. And the second one is the Otto Skorzeny story. I should have done them just speaking out. But I wanted the Otto Skorzeny story. You can do it in sort of little bits, and you can sort of make it a bit more exciting, sort of move it around a bit. Which doesn't lend itself to sort of talking like this. Whereas I'm talking about the Wehrmacht and Babin Yar, well, it's just a march, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And bye for now. And I'll have to go back and I've got to look for some clients for our product. Thank you. All right, bye.